Seltzer Kings
podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the generative AI assistant that can securely understand your business data, summarize results, and streamline tasks. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
What does an 18-year veteran of the tech industry and a 20-year veteran of the military have in common? More than you might think. Welcome, everyone, to the Second Act podcast, leveling up your life's journey. Welcome back to the Second Act with Michael and John. How you doing today, John?
Hey, Michael. I am good, man. I just got back from my alma mater. I'm on the board there, and was able to go to graduation and see a bunch of 976. It's kind of a small school. 976 graduates just receive their diplomas and head out on a fresh new start. So it's cool to see that excitement again, and smiles on faces and excitement in their eyes, anticipation for what's next. And so it was a fun trip, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's, university towns are so fun because there's always this fresh energy coming into it all the time. It's a persistent energy and new ideas, new things being created. And our guest today happens to live in one of those amazing towns where I am an alumnus myself.
Yeah, we're all Coloradans today.
That's right.
Residents, yeah. Are you guys getting the wind that I'm getting down here?
Oh, man.
Trash is all down the streets. It looks post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, it was hurricane force today. This morning when we were waking up, we were like, what's going on outside?
It's not often, though, that we get all three of us, you and I, and then our guest, to be all in the same state. So it's kind of cool, especially when there's something going on.
Oh, yeah. And our guest today, she focuses in on a topic that is near and dear to my heart with her second act. So I'm excited to kick things off. So in this week's episode, we are joined by Lindsey Nehls, co-founder of Elevate Leadership, a cutting-edge learning management platform for Fortune 1000 companies. Lindsey is certified in New Venture West Coaching to Excellence, DISC, Booth, and Center for Creative Leadership 360 assessments. Lindsey is also a first-round capital mentor. Lindsey grew up in a small town on the East Coast, has spent time in the Bay Area, but now calls Boulder, Colorado home. Lindsey's academic pursuits include time at Harvard and Middlebury College, and with a passion for the outdoors, her professional track led her into the Cleantech space. Over the course of 15 years in this space, Lindsey built high-performing teams, led successful business transformation efforts, helped orchestrate M&A transactions, and reached the executive levels before embarking on her own entrepreneurial journey. An impressive background by any measure, but Lindsey was not immune to experiencing anxiety and depression, and she ultimately came to the realization that who you work for makes all the difference in your overall well-being as an employee, a colleague, a friend, a spouse, and a parent. When Lindsey is not working, she loves spending time with her husband and 3 kids outside. No surprise based on her background there. And she enjoys hiking, mountain biking, tearing up the ski slopes of Colorado, and anything else the great outdoors has to offer. Welcome to the show, Lindsey.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, John. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. What's the favorite mountain of yours in Colorado for skiing?
I had a feeling that question might come.
That's a good question.
That's tough. It's tough. It depends on who our family mountain is Winter Park, like when we're skiing with the kids.
Okay.
To say, I mean, I know it's changed a lot over the years, but the Back Bowls and Vail are pretty special. Also love A Basin, love the culture. So what about you? Are you a skier?
So my family, I've got 2 boys and my wife, we all are snowboarders, but this last spring break, we found the little hidden gem called Beaver Creek, and my wife and boys love the 3 o'clock cookies. So a little secret for anybody that's not familiar,
Yeah.
meet at the bottom of the slope at 3:00, and they bring out fresh chocolate chip cookies. So it's pretty cool every day. So that became our new favorite. But we're big Breckenridge, Vail, Beaver Creek. We have the Epic Pass, so we go all over the place. And
nice.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I've got to ask, second question.
Yeah.
Small town in the East Coast, that literally could be across 10 different states.
That's fair.
Where did you grow up?
So I grew up north of New York City, which about like 2 hours. So Hudson River Valley area.
Okay.
Small town, meaning 2,000 people. So pretty small, but yeah, kind of like rural farm, horses. That was sort of the landscape.
Love it. Love it.
It's interesting. Our producer, he's going to be disappointed he's not listening because he is in Brooklyn, but raves about Hudson, New York, and it being this sort of artsy, beautiful town right on the river. And he's sold me on the idea of like retiring there. Not that that's one of my, my top 3, but it maybe is top 10 now. Destinations for retirement at some point. But he has nothing but good things to say about it.
Okay, I think COVID put the Hudson River Valley on the map. Before that, it was only I was north of New York City because I didn't grow up in Manhattan, and they're like, oh, Albany? And I'm like, no, South Albany. It was like, no one knew of it. Now I'm like, they're like, all of the Hudson River Valley. I'm like, yeah, that's totally a COVID impact.
COVID phenomenon. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, and I work for a company now that's out of Guilford, Connecticut. So I'm out there a lot, and I recognize, man, you blink in some of these towns and you're already through them. But the way you can navigate through cities and states and everything makes it pretty fun because you're like, oh, I'm now in New York.
Right.
I used to live in Virginia, and you could be in D.C., Virginia, and Maryland, all within about 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's true. Yep.
So tell us about life out there and what shaped you into who you are today, and those important moments that kind of were important to you.
Yeah, good question. So I grew up playing ice hockey.
Ooh.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we're small enough that you don't have girls and boys teams in ice hockey. You have one team. You have a team. Yeah. And that team has maybe like a girl, or maybe, the one year we had 2 girls. That was pretty exciting.
Okay.
So you grow. I feel like a lot of my childhood memories are like shaped from like the hockey locker room, or like playing ice hockey. And I will say chivalry in the age of like 12, 13. I don't know, John, how old are your boys now?
I've got an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old. Yes, they're there.
Yeah. So come 12, come 13, chivalry is not, it's not alive and well. So anyway, I feel like growing up and playing boys hockey, ice hockey pretty much with checking really gave me some grit. So
You're like a living example of Mighty Ducks.
Yes. Yeah, so I spent a lot of time at the rink. Also, I spent a lot of time outside just because my dad's a sporting life artist. So what that means is he basically paints people doing what they love to do most. So his whole, he's a conservationist at heart. And so he wants to be able to take people to their favorite mountain stream, if you will, or their favorite place in the world to remind them of that beauty and that landscape so that it informs their behavior to protect that landscape.
That's cool.
And so I just grew up like in a very outdoorsy family. So it was like sort of if I wanted to spend time with my dad, it was often on a river or at the hockey game. So anyway, I just grew up with like a real appreciation for the outdoors and played a ton of sports pretty much. And I had a brother, so we played sports together. So that was fun.
In today's world of technology 24/7 and the urbanization of everything, I think there's sort of a weird trend happening where people are like sort of revolting against that, and they're like, I want to get back to the great outdoors and enjoying life away from a screen and all the other things that take us away from nature.
Yeah, no, I feel very fortunate. It's definitely been something that's gone through my whole life in terms of the outdoors has sort of been my church. But I think that was absolutely informed just by having grown up in it and having been that was sort of just what I knew.
Yep.
You guys can correct me, but I feel like COVID really shifted us back outside because really that was the only place we could go. I was living in Virginia at the time, and we were up in the Shenandoahs a lot. And it seemed like everybody was realizing this new appreciation for what's always been there, which is ironic.
Yeah.
But now as we get farther and farther away from those COVID times, we're kind of drifting back indoors and back in front of technology and back. And so it, my family especially is trying to hold on to that sense of outdoor enthusiasm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, it helps being out here in Colorado where that's always around and that's always supported and celebrated.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at, like your point about COVID, look at the places that, like the towns that, just really like developed all of a sudden or, population dramatically, right? It was those towns in the outdoors. It was like, wait, I can work and live in a ski town. Like, but I agree. You kind of have to keep it, you sort of have to keep it front of mind. I mean, it's one of the main reasons we moved to Colorado is my husband and I love to ski, as we talked about. And driving, 8 hours to Tahoe because of traffic was just, with 3 little kids, wasn't quite in the cart. So I feel very lucky to live here and hopefully get to build forts with my kids as I did when I was little. So
building forts, tree houses.
Yeah.
Lindsey, how long were you out on the East Coast? It wasn't until post-college that you moved out here?
Yeah, it was post-college. One-way ticket after graduation to California, and then 3 years ago moved to Boulder. So yeah.
And so, where did you go to college? Where were you?
I went to Middlebury up in Vermont.
Okay.
Yeah. So also, I guess I like my small towns. Also a small town, but they had a ski mountain, so I got out of the rink.
But yeah, I mean, you brought up a good point, John and Lindsey, about just being intentional with your time and how you spend it. I think we've mentioned, and it's the same rule that applies to everybody. Everybody has 168 hours in the week to spend, and again, with all the things coming at us all the time, you really need to know yourself and know how you want to structure your day to get things done for your work, for your family, and then for yourself in that process. And I mean, there's numerous books and studies on the effects of nature on your overall well-being. So I can certainly appreciate, Lindsey, your desire to pursue a career in the clean tech industry to help preserve, all the beauty that Earth has to offer. So what were, like, aside from the hockey and, just going down the river with your dad, were there other things that helped sort of your decision in pursuing work around the environment or sustainable energy? Was there like a thing you saw or something you read that was like, I got to help fix this?
Yeah, good question. I think it was actually in Middlebury in college. So we drove, it was like one night in college, we're all sitting around and probably having a beer or talking. And I remember it was like getting towards the summertime. We're like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to go? Some of my friends climbed. It was like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to go on a climbing trip? And then we're like, oh yeah, like that'd be great. But like, how are we going to get, there were a bunch of us who wanted to go. We had mapped it out. We're like, that'd be fun to go climbing in Wyoming or what have you. And so how are we going to get everybody? And I'm like, oh, what if we got a school bus? And then what if we drove that school bus on waste vegetable oil? Like, what if we did this in a super sustainable way? This is like Middlebury College. I also played lacrosse just to like counterbalance this. But anyway, so we're like, yeah, let's see if we can pull it off. And so it turns out if you ever, you're short on cash but need a lot of capacity, school buses are, they have to retire them after a certain amount. So there's a good volume of low-cost school buses out there. There's a bit more, there's not a lot of demand for them. Okay. So we bought a school bus and we literally converted it to run a waste vegetable oil. And we painted it. And I'll never forget, too, thinking like, okay, how many times are we going to get pulled over? They're all going to wonder what's going on in this bus. But we actually did not get pulled over once. But anyway, so we drove. We literally went from Vermont to California. There was a picture actually on the cover of USA Today of the bus going over the Golden Gate Bridge. Wow. But it was like amazing to me because I had driven cross country before.
Yeah.
And I just thought, wait a second, are you serious? Like 13 college kids able to get from point A to point B without ever going to a gas station, and yet our entire energy landscape, like our entire ecosystem depends on gas stations, right? It's like a way of, it's a way of operating, right? And so to me, I was just like blown away by that. I'm like, it was astounding to me that such was possible. And so really it was like that trip that I just thought, you know what, like this is the problem I want to go solve. And I really believe, and I still believe that like business is an incredible agent of change. And particularly in certain industries like energy is complex, it is capital intensive, it is historically centralized, right? And so I sort of felt like this is going to be, if this is going to be solved, right, it's going to be solved within a large, like predominantly, like historically speaking, oil companies those are going to be the players in this solution. Like they have to be part of the equation. And so, I was little in Middlebury, and then one-way ticket to San Francisco. And then the largest energy company out there is Chevron. And so I literally was like, I'm going to work at Chevron. They don't know that yet, but and then nice. I remember trying to get that job. And of course, like no one had heard of Middlebury College. You know what I mean? I was like, this might be tougher than I thought. But yeah.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, not many people have heard of Oral Roberts University, and I have to clarify that it's not a dental school.
There you go. Yeah, I had to clarify that it wasn't a community college. Nothing against community college, but you know what I mean. I was like, I worked really hard to get in there. So I hear
Lindsey, you lived the original van life, like before Instagram and before all the like people just picking up and living the mobile like van life for a year or more.
I know.
It's awesome to hear that, and discovering a passion along the way is a really fascinating sort of way to, you know, lead yourself into a particular industry that is historically sort of set in their ways. And like you said, very capital intensive. The infrastructure is already there, but trying to change that in sort of whatever incremental way you can, I think long term is necessary for appreciating all the things we discussed at the beginning of this, at the start of this conversation. So
yeah,
hold on, I gotta ask though, Lindsey.
Yeah,
I mean, I've got so many questions, but one of them is, you guys drive this van across the United States on vegetable oil. Did you do the conversion yourself? Was that a school project?
Yeah. So a buddy of mine, one of our friends, his family had owned a couple car dealerships in Vermont, and so he was incredibly talented from like a mechanic engineering perspective. And so we went to his parents, like they have a dealership, so they obviously do a servicing as well of cars. So we set up shop at his house for part of the summer to retrofit this school bus, because you have to actually, like, the way you do it is you have to essentially like vegetable oils, you can imagine, right? It's thick, it's viscous. And so you basically just need to get it to a lower viscosity, so you need to heat it up. And so we added a 55-gallon drum with coolant, that went through copper wire. So essentially, like, you started the engine on diesel, and then the coolant would get going, and the coolant's actually warm, and it'd heat up the vegetable oil, this vat of vegetable oil, and that would lower the viscosity. So then you could basically, we had a lever that you could then switch the fuel line to that from that 55-gallon drum, and all of a sudden you were running on biodiesel.
Cooking with gas.
Yeah, exactly.
And so where do you stop and get more vegetable oil? Are you pulling up to McDonald's asking them for their used?
No, McDonald's. No, you don't, because that's like, that stuff is thick. Like, that's not, you don't want that stuff. Well, yeah, you got to scout. We had our bikes, so you'd stop in a town, and then we'd go. Every restaurant, it's like garbage for restaurants. Like, they have to dispose of it.
Yeah.
Like, even when you're cooking, like, you make bacon, and like you got, there's like you have to dispose of it. And so there's actually, like, you'll see. So basically, we would go in the back alley. It's like just on the essentially the back alley. But we'd bike, and we'd be opening up the big dumpster lids. There's always like the dumpsters for trash, and then there's the dumpster for vegetable oil for restaurants.
Yeah.
And so you open it up and you kind of check out, like, what's the viscosity like? How we looking? And then you typically Chinese restaurants, they use peanut oil to cook often, and that is what you really want. That is like nice and clear and thin.
Okay.
And so then we go to the front end of the restaurant, and we're like, is there any way we could take some of your vegetable oil? And they're like, wait, what? And then we'd tell them and we'd show them the bus, and they'd often kindly like, we'll come in for dinner. And, you know, they'd offer us a free meal. And so then we just literally like siphon it out of the dumpster, if you will. And then you have to filter it. And then off we went. So we had some good memories.
It's a whole team effort.
Yeah.
It was a whole team effort. Yeah.
I love it.
We got reporters to try the fuel. We'd kind of joke around with them and be like, oh no, I see, you can just taste it. And they were like, wait, I'm not going to taste gas. I'm like, no, it's not gas. So we had fun. It was good.
And you said there's news articles written on your guys' journey?
Yeah, it's real. You can fact check me. Like, this did happen, yeah.
No,
we believe you.
I want to read more about it.
Yeah.
It was good. But it was like, I'm a big believer in, like, you have to kind of experiment with things, right? Like, that was like the ultimate prototyping, if you will, or like testing something and or having an experience, right? And realizing that, like, whoa, this worked, you know? And then recognizing, like, you know, what do you learn from that? And how do you channel that? And how do you find your way from that? And so it really was like the way I found my first career. And it was rooted, of course, in like my values and what I cared about. And so it all aligned very well.
And did you guys have a backup plan? You know, you get to Kansas and you realize, hey, nobody's out here, you know, using vegetable oil. Did you guys have an alternate way to get it? The rest of the...
Well, the thing is that, I mean, first of all, we're in college. Like, there's no, like...
Yeah, there's no backup plans.
The thing, though, I mean, I don't know, the coolest thing about the solution, though, is that, or maybe sort of what was so kind of, I don't know, impactful about the whole experience is that it's actually, like, vegetable oil is, like, omnipresent. Like, there's not an issue of supply. Like, every single town, no matter how small that town is, like, it's like garbage. Like, if there's a restaurant, you have vegetable oil. You have to dispose of it. You dispose of it separately. You don't dispose of it in your garbage.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of like, there was always going to be vegetable oil. Could the bus break down? Could, like, our engineering, you know, fall? But yeah, of course. But we would deal with that problem at the time it arrived.
Yeah.
And somehow it never came up. So we were fine.
And as they're disposing, I know we're spending a lot of time on this topic, but it's kind of interesting because and it's going to transition to the next topic. But because it's omnipresent and each restaurant is disposing of it in their back, is there like do you know what to look for? Is it in a specific container, or you just like, how do you sort of identify the supply that exists in the location you're at?
You know, it's real. Like, it's one of those things that if you know it, you see it everywhere. So if you go to the back of the restaurant, you know those big dumpsters, like might have on a construction site or any like commercial grade that, you know, has that big like plastic top, right? They're typically blue. Yeah. Just next to that, behind a restaurant is another one that is only for waste oil.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's
Okay. Now you're going to see them everywhere, Michael.
I know what to look for. The ideas that are going through my head right now about like businesses that could be started are just, we're not going to go into that, but it's kind of fascinating. It was really fascinating. So thank you for sharing, Lindsey. But that takes you on a 15-year Cleantech journey where you held a number of high-impact roles, scaling high-performance teams, transforming company operations, navigating business acquisitions. So tell us about that 15-year period in the short time that we have, like highlighting the things that stand out the most for you from that part of your life.
Yeah, I mean, it was an incredible journey. I feel super grateful. Like I really kind of came with a mission and didn't, you know, luckily finally someone let me in the door. And once they let me in the door, then it was about, I started off in sales, which at the time I was like, wait, what? I remember interviewing and they're like, I think you should go into sales. And I remember my stomach just like turning because I was like, sales? All I could picture from growing up in my childhood was like the person who came and sold Cutco Nice to us. So I was like, there's no way. But I was like, you know,
be careful. I'm in sales right now, so be careful.
I've spent time in sales. Revenue role.
We're all in sales, but I didn't know any better, you know? And so, of course, in the interview, I was like, that's so fascinating. I really appreciate your feedback and insights. Could you tell me a little bit more about like where you came to that conclusion or what your thoughts are? Anyway, so bottom line is I had this career in sales, and then it just kind of like, then I started, you know, building the org, and we had, I ran some turnarounds, and when we got how to carve out sales. So anyway, to your point about the M&A, but I mean, I think the there were so many memories from it. I think things I learned, right, were like always trying to create mission within what we are doing, right? And granted, I was like very fortunate to do a very mission-oriented job. Like we were helping, where I landed in Chevron was that we were helping school district public entities become more sustainable and operate more efficiently. So that could be like updating all their lighting or putting in solar in the parking lot. But just always like enabling everyone, all like the constituents, my teams, right, to like the mission and, you know, sort of what we are all trying to do together. So that was sort of a big learning that I feel like I took through every leadership opportunity I had, or even like trying to get, you know, we got bought and sold, and, you know, just even like, again, like we had to get everyone to sign their offer letter, right? Like 300 people. I'm just like, okay, well, you know, just really connecting back to like, what's the purpose and what are we up to, and why that matters and how that can be meaningful to everyone in the room.
And since we've all spent time in a revenue generating role, I mean, when you do it, you realize how important it is to the functioning of a company. I mean, it supplies the oxygen to a company, essentially, in my opinion. And when you have the opportunity to do it in smaller companies, you really understand the impact of bringing revenue in the door, bringing that oxygen in the organization to help it grow, and help, you know, the employees build their careers and have all the operational impacts that money does for the business. It's pretty powerful and special thing all at once. One of the funny things someone once asked me when I did spend time in that role, and is at the end of a deal, when it closes, are you super excited or are you exhausted? And I'm curious what your answer is before I give mine.
Yeah, that is a good question. That just brought up, oh gosh, that like, so I would say I was often pretty exhausted, but I'm a big believer in celebrating. Like, I really don't feel like people stop enough generally, particularly in work, to like celebrate their accomplishments. We're so achievement oriented. We're so go, go, go. So I was in leadership positions, not even before I even got in leadership positions. I was probably over the tips of my skis to do this, but like I was one who was like, we will celebrate. So I remember one time, at the time it was like the largest project we had ever done. It was written up in the Wall Street Journal and New York Times. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Anyway, but basically it was like a monstrous effort. And I wasn't even a manager at this point. Like I was a sales rep. And I'm like, we must celebrate. Like people just worked so hard on this. And I remember I got pushed back because I worked it's an energy company, like safety. I mean, it's oil. There's like rigs, right? Like safety's everything. And so they're like, we can't. And I was like, well, I arranged a bar. Like I've got a space. We can go. We can all celebrate. It was like 2 p.m. And I remember the CEO, or I don't know, maybe it was I don't know who it was at the time. But anyway, they're like, well, we can't do that because safety, you're not to like drink on hours, right? Yeah. And I was like, wait, really? I'm like, okay, that makes perfect sense. Totally makes sense. Good call. So I was like, let's just close the office. And so we closed the office and we all went to the bar. But I was like, we will find a way to celebrate. But I was so tired. But I was like, I'm going to create a venue for people to celebrate, even if all I want to do is like crawl in a ball. But anyway, what about you, Michael? Do you feel excitement or
100% agree with you, Lindsey. It because there's only so much in your control during a sales cycle, right? And you have to execute that almost flawlessly, not perfectly flawlessly, but almost flawlessly. And so you're working with different stakeholders internally to move through the points in the process. And by the time you get to the end and dealing with all the variability and sort of unexpected things that are thrown your way, and it finally closes, you're just like, you just take a breath and you're like, all right, it's done. I can relax for a moment because you have like 1,000 people asking you, hey, how's that deal coming along? You've got the CEO, you've got your boss, you've got your colleagues, you've got other departments. Hey, I heard about this deal. It was mentioned in the all hands. We've got what's going on with that? Is there anything I can do to help? So it's an exhausting endeavor. But to your point, it's very fruitful and rewarding, not just for you as an individual, but for the organization. And everyone should come together to celebrate that moment. and then move on to the next thing. Because John and I are huge Michael Jordan fans, and I don't know if you've seen The Last Dance, but in that, Phil Jackson has a really famous quote where he says, "You're only successful in the moment you perform a successful act. After that is over, you've got to do it again." And that's sort of the right mindset for a lot of things in life, but especially in sales. So anyway, that's my take on it.
Yeah.
This is going to lead me to my next question for you. But are people and celebrating those victories and what they've done to get us to that point, if you don't stop and recognize that, it's going to lead to burnout. It's going to lead to unhappiness. It's going to lead to people quitting and leaving the business. And now you're searching for talent. Now you're spending more time looking for the new people to come in than you are moving from your last success. So great for you to recognize that importance and push through, even though you had some pushback on celebrating.
Where there's a will, there's a way,
Yeah.
It's a team sport. Selling is a team sport. So I think you were 100%.
Absolutely.
Lindsey, on pushing for that. And it's funny, I've spent some time in Europe for work, and I don't think they have the same rules about the drinking at 2:00 or whatever that we have here in the States. So they appreciate life in a different way, which, maybe we could learn a thing or two from time to time there. But anyway, that is probably leading us into your next leg of your journey, where, you've experienced helping lead all these people and making a difference. And now you focused on company performance and the health of an organization as one of the key attributes for success in whatever it is in life. What was the moment or event that led you to start your own business? What was the thing in that 15-year journey that said, I got to go and start something on my own?
I think it was more just like this continually learning and realizing that who you work for is everything. So for me, it was really my mental health. It was like how I felt, how I was treated, how I just saw too, like when I ran, I'm a huge fan of culture. Like I really think that my favorite quote is culture eats strategy for breakfast. Yeah. So I think it's all like we have to, and I think culture is something it exists, but you could definitely create it. And so whenever, like one time I had to turn around a region and we were able to increase sales by 1,000% in a year. But I didn't have to let anyone go. I just had to entirely change how we operated. I had to get people to believe in themselves again. Like, so nice. I guess I just learned that I just kind of kept learning, if you will, that like culture is everything. Who you work for is everything. It's really at the end of the day, like I believe that managers they really are the heartbeat of an organization. Like they are so valuable and they are the employee experience, if you will. And so basically like it took me a long, long time to get the courage to actually go do it. I mean, this was not like, I don't know, it felt a lot simpler in college. Like I was on a track and I had to get off that track. I was on a track to like be a CEO. And I also had, again, like I'm thinking about what are the themes here. It's like, it's experience, right? So I'm an executive coach really early on in my career. And what we do, like part of our business is executive coaching. And so I just got exposure to it, And again, it was like, I didn't even know it. I mean, I guess I somewhat knew it existed because I asked for one. But the point is like, I didn't really even know the depth of what it could do. And it was so transformative for my own career. So it was like experiencing that and then realizing, wait, I could do this for other people. And then sort of realizing that at the end of the day, it's people that transform businesses. And so that was sort of and managers. And so it was sort of like the problem I actually want to solve now is not necessarily making our energy economy more sustainable. While that is by all means still incredibly important. What I want to solve is how to help managers be the manager they want to work for. Because I really believe it's learned. And I kind of got more, given my own like sort of mental health experiences, I got more attached to that mission of like, how do we create environments that bring out the best in people? And so that's really like sort of all of that culminating in, okay, now what I really want to do is actually become an executive coach and solve this problem then at scale, which came later, right, in terms of like building a business and building all the offerings. But it was really like a number of experiences. And it took me 5 years to actually get the courage to quit. Like, I'll never forget my husband walking in the door, and he's like, "Did you do it? Did you quit?" And I'm like, "No, I think I figured out a plan." You know what I mean? And he's like, "Write it down. Like, get out your journal.
Yes.
Write it down. Tomorrow I'm quitting." So I wrote it down. So I was like, all right, I gotta do this. I can't walk through that front door again if I haven't quit. And it was like, I mean, I give him all the credit in the world, right? Like, we had a baby, and like I had a really nice job, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he was a total partner, because I was not happy. Even though on paper everything looked like, how could you possibly walk away from this? You know what I mean? But it wasn't like true to me anymore. So it was time for my second act.
I love it.
I want to get to something real quick. Two things that you just said, Lindsey. You a minute ago said you did 1,000% increase in 1 year. Anybody that heard that should have perked their ears up and been like, "Holy cow, what did you do?" I mean, were you working with the lights off and you turned the lights on and that was the change? What is the secret to have such an impact in 1 year?
I mean, it really was changing our culture. Like, there wasn't, I mean, there were so it was a region within a business, and they were incredibly talented people. Like, they've been doing this longer than I had been doing it. But I mean, you've been in, right? They were sales leaders, essentially, right? It was a sales team.
Yeah.
And they just had lost their confidence. They weren't collaborating. Like, they needed some new ideas. But at the end of the day, like, we didn't need to replace the people. It was just like, we really needed to change the entire environment in those offices and give them like hope and inspiration and confidence again. And so that's what we did. I mean, we like had an offsite, we came together, we like wrote a charter together of like the culture we're going to have, how we're going to operate. We brought in other regions to like share best practices, and we rallied, and we continued to like message the exact same thing over and over in terms of like our values and what we're up to. And we celebrated along the way, and it worked.
Was there some skepticism at first, or did everybody buy into that from the get-go?
Oh yeah, I got
Okay.
a little while there. Yeah. But like, I just, of course there was, right? And that was tricky. And like so one of the things I tried to do too, to like get people on board, was like, I was super vulnerable. I had a co-leader at the time. He ran ops, I ran sales. And so we just talked a lot about our own story, just tried to like show up in a pretty vulnerable way, in a pretty real way, not pretending to have the answers, but like having their back and believing we could do something, and showing support. And so, but yeah, I mean, there were absolute skeptics. There were people who bought in pretty late on the journey, but there were others that bought in early, and that helped the others come along. And it was a process. It was also it was not. I mean, it was not easy. It was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, for sure.
Well, I wanted to clarify that for our listeners, because they're going to hear 1,000% in 1 year and be like, "Holy cow, she's a genius." But my perception was true, that there was some skepticism, there was some pushback, there was a lot of work that went into it. It wasn't, night and day. The other thing you said, and I'm going to quote you on this because I want you to clarify a little bit. You said you having a dialogue with your husband about quitting the job, and you came in and he asked you if you quit. And you said, "I had a nice job, but I wasn't happy."
Yeah.
Expand on that for a second, because I think our listeners are interested, because we've got a lot of people in that position.
Totally.
They have what they think is a nice job, but they're not happy.
Yeah. I mean, I had an amazing job. I didn't even have to work that hard. I got paid really well. It was absurd. But I like really was not happy. I mean, I was not fulfilled. I don't know. I'm trying to like think how unhappy. I mean, often I have trouble like sleeping. I was just so not interested in it anymore. I was, I didn't feel fulfilled. I didn't feel alive. I just felt like I was always kind of faking it. It was awful.
It was a grind, but Lindsey, you have to, or at least in my experience, as a leader, you have to sort of put on your armor and be there for your team and your family, even though you might be struggling inside with some things that are just sort of grinding on you, like you're not getting that, like you said, purpose and fulfillment in that process, even though, some parts of it might be easy, but the answer came to you to want to pursue something else that filled that void in your life. And I'm sure you've had vacations like mine in roles like that where you are working on vacation. You're talking to clients, talking to your team, talking to other stakeholders in the company, and that's supposed to be your sort of precious time together with your family or friends to disconnect and recharge yourself. And you can only do that for so long before you get completely burnt out. And I know we've talked to guests who have experienced that, like yourself, and it has led to these hard pivots in life that can seem really hard and daunting at the beginning, but you're working much more than maybe you had expected, but you're pursuing something that is really fulfilling for yourself, and you feel like it is more helpful to others on a bigger scale, maybe.
Yeah, it's like on paper it looked so good. Like I was actually at a point where like I wasn't working on vacation anymore. Like I mean the place kind of ran itself. Like I had an incredible team that I wasn't doing much anymore. And so that was what it was sort of like on paper. You're like, wait, you have a young kid, like this is like dream life, right? Like, but it did not speak to me anymore. And like, as a result, like it, I started working harder after I quit, but I didn't mind that because I like was interested in what I was doing, and it felt aligned to who I was as a person, and I just didn't really feel like faking it anymore.
Well, I appreciate you clarifying that, Lindsey, because we do have a lot of listeners, and we've had a lot of past guests that talk about this place where they're making great money. They're maybe not having to work that hard, and it's kind of a dream for some to get to that place and just coast. But it's in that coasting that a lot of people realize, well, I've got more in the tank. I've got more. I'm drawn to do more. I want to provide better and bigger, and not just monetarily, but I want to do bigger things, maybe things that I've put off for years. And when you said that, it just so succinctly kind of captured that thought in people who are looking at what they're doing and thinking, is there more out there? And do I even have the leverage to leave or the excuse to leave? Sometimes you don't need an excuse. You just need to go pursue what makes you happy.
Yeah.
And so,
and I mean, granted, like I feel very privileged that I got to do that, right? Like I was able to save enough that I could do it. I could take a risk, but I also think sometimes, it's hard. Like you just need, like, I'm so grateful for my husband who like literally like, I mean, he just finally was like enough and like forced me to do it. And thank goodness, because sometimes you just need someone to like push you out of the plane,
Yeah. So now you have Elevate Leadership.
Yeah.
And you're helping leaders be the best versions of themselves through this vehicle. So tell me a little bit about Elevate and how it started and where it is going.
Yeah. So, so just as you said, our whole mission is to help managers be the kind of managers they would want to work for. And how we do that is it's live workshops. We have a micro-learning platform so leaders can learn how to delegate or how to have a tough conversation in 5 to 10 minutes, even if it's at 11 o'clock at night, right? And then we also provide one-on-one coaching. So I think, how it started is, so I first became an executive coach because that's what I knew. Where I was like, okay, that was really transformative. I'm going to go see if I'm going to give myself 1 year. And I had 3 goals at the end of that year. I was like, 1, I need to figure out if I like this. 2, I need to figure out if I could be any good out of it. And 3, can I make enough money for our family? So I got to the end of the year and I was able to check all those boxes. And then, fast forward classic. I was like, but I'm not like solving this at scale enough. Like I didn't really feel like I was doing enough. I was like, I'm just a natural builder. And so I was like, I met my co-founder, friends of friends, and her zone of genius is she can take so much research and content and break it down or pull it together and put it into like incredibly concise, actionable frameworks. And ED is incredible. And so I went to one of her workshops and I was blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, because I was very spoiled to get management training. I worked for a massive company. I went to Harvard Business School's executive program. And I was like, this is so much better than anything I ever got. And I'm like, we got to bring this to the world. And so we became friends and met, and like I, kind of like she would refer me business. And then finally, she always says I like, I just wouldn't, I was persistent enough. I finally like wore her down to actually like build a business with me. And so we, she's my work wife. We got business married, and we formed Elevate Leadership, and now we're about to scale. Like we're helping, we're growing, and our whole thing is like, I don't want to just help. Like first it became like, well, live training is not very scalable. So we still do that, of course, but like we need to create a product that can help people, in a much more scalable, more accessible price point as well. And so we launched Elevate Academy. And so, so it's going well, and I love it. I have so much fun.
And I've seen the product. It's amazing. The micro learning platform is incredibly well done, incredibly high quality work, and it's in the right format. And just like you said, Lindsey, the way Elevate is able to take complex topics that deal with people, which are complex, to begin with, and distill it down into something very consumable that is very applicable is just phenomenal. You guys have done an outstanding job.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And you really talked about the problems that coaches have. I got out of the Marine Corps. That was my experience in executive leadership and, delegation and empowering those around you to make the decisions and rolling with those decisions. And then, kind of crisis management at the time.
Wow.
And so I got out and I started coaching as well. And you named those issues that face every coach really at some point in their career is, how do I scale this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do I improve the product that I'm making and make it more tangible for more people out there that need these resources?
Yeah.
And, finding a partner is one way to do that, right? Play off your own strengths and weaknesses.
Right. Yeah.
Because that is a lonely business when you're out there coaching by yourself and the only feedback you have is from your clients. And, they're paying for the service, so they could all say you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, but you always still feel like there's more to give. And so I think finding that coworker or that partner to help tell you that what you're doing is not perfect and that there's ways to improve is such a great way to expand and make that more applicable to everyone out there. So
yeah, I feel incredibly fortunate to have found that partnership. And I agree. It's like finding a co-founder too is like the greatest gift, because you really can. Like I have plenty of weaknesses, and so it's been nice to partner up with someone where you're really like 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, that's what happened to us. Michael and I were kind of doing our own thing, and podcast was on both of our radars, but we didn't know how to do it, I think in a silo. And when we partnered up, I realized that I was all weaknesses and Michael was all strengths.
Yeah.
So it worked out really well, but we look back and we see where our partnership fused, and it's so informative to where we are today. And that's why we try to tell everybody about finding a partner. If you're in this solopreneurship or this entrepreneurship, and you want to expand, the fastest way to do that is find somebody that is capable of doing your weakness at their highest level.
Mm-hmm.
And it is 1 + 1 = 5. It's so transformational.
Yeah. I mean, having an accountability partner or just someone who's not, tied to you by blood in any way, or sort of your close friends growing up, but can shoot you straight, good or bad, in a process that you're sort of both going through to try something really hard, and you don't know the outcome, I find it to be incredibly valuable. And I don't know if I would have started anything like this without John. The online media space, there's low barriers to entry. There's lots of competition to create an interesting product that it fills a niche and grows, over time. And you're building sort of a content library around all these things. I've been able to apply my skills. John has been able to apply his skills, and I think we've made progress, and that's pretty much all you can ask for at this point.
Wow.
And it's hard. I mean, entrepreneurship, I'll tell you, if you don't have intrinsic motivation, there's intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. If you don't have intrinsic motivation, something like in you that's driving you to do something, don't pursue entrepreneurship, in my opinion. Like you have to want to do it yourself. If you need external validation, the amount of mistakes and failures you're going to go through. I mean, there's weeks where it seems like nothing's going right, and then there's weeks where it seems like everything is going right. It's just, that's the journey. But it's a fun one, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah.
I don't think we've had one of those weeks where we felt like everything's going right.
But it's right around the corner, John. It's right around the corner.
I'm waiting for it. You let me know when we get there.
Yeah.
We'll celebrate.
That's right. Good.
But Lindsey, as we sort of bring the show to a close, all our shows end with practical advice or insights for those contemplating or just getting started in their second act in life. And we like to ask our guests what they would like to leave our audience with today. So what would you like to share with our audience that they can take away from this conversation?
So one thing that I find really helpful, if you're in the situation where you're like, I know I'm not happy, I need to do something else, but I don't know exactly what to do. One thing I find helpful is I call it an energy journal, but essentially we're really good at telling ourselves things such that we don't even always know what really brings ourselves joy, because we've told ourselves stories, we tell ourselves future stories, past stories, right? And so the concept of an energy journal is like, go get some data, like get the facts. And so all you do is like get a journal or however you work, right, on your phone. Essentially, it's just like you're just jotting down during the day what, like, was that, like, on a scale from 0 to 10, 10 is like I'm in flow. Like I absolutely feel alive. I could do this. Like I love this. 0 is like, oh my gosh, please stop this now. And you're just rating the events of your day. And then you write notes to it. So it's like, okay, this, right? Maybe this is like an 8 for me because I love reflecting. But I'm thinking like, what was it? Like, so I write down 8 and then I'm like, okay, who was there? Was I alone or not, right? What did we talk about? What was the nature of it? And you do that for a good 2 weeks and you start to see trends and you're like, oh, wow, okay, I clearly am someone who like, I need to be interacting with people. I need to actually not have something scripted or whatever it is, right? You'll start to see these trends of what gives you joy and what drains you, like what gives you energy, hence the energy journal. And then that gives you things that you can go prototype because you're like, okay, I clearly definitely can't be completely on my own or, and then you're like, all right, well, what are some jobs that have that or who could I go find? And so anyway, I just find it a really good way to like, it's actionable. It's a way to check in and find out like, all right, what is it actually that puts me in the state of flow or gets me close to that? And then how can I go do more of that? And how do I do less of what is draining me?
Interesting.
Wow. That's really good.
Yeah. I'm probably going to use that.
Right, do.
I don't know if I've heard of that ever. I've heard of food journals and calorie journals and journaling to journal, of course, but, to write down those things that give you energy, to write down those things that make you happy and then replicate, it's one of those ideas that you kind of shake your head and think, well, why haven't I been doing this, already? Why am I not pursuing the things that, bring me satisfaction? So
yeah,
it's really
well,
good.
It's from Designing Your Life. I can't take credit for it, but Designing Your Life, it's from that book.
Okay.
Lindsey, John and I probably couldn't agree with you more that people make all the difference in every aspect of our lives. And it truly has been a pleasure talking through this topic with you today. I know it's super important to me in any kind of leadership role, and I'm sure it has been with John in his journey. So thank you for sharing your journey with our audience. And for listeners who are interested in what you're doing and want to get in touch, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can go, our website is elevateleadership.com. And then on there, you can just like hit chat with us and you can set up an appointment.
Okay.
It's probably the best way. Yeah. Or LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn and message me. I'm happy to chat.
Okay. Will do. LinkedIn top voice from what I can see recently. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, we'll try to find a couple of those articles talking about your bus ride across the nation on vegetable oil. See if we can't post those in the show notes as well.
I love our stories from our guests. They're just so amazing.
Well, Lindsey, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us and our audience. And thanks for coming on. And what a story you have, and you share it with our audience and our listeners, and it's going to make an impact on somebody's life. And that's part of what we talk about here, is always looking back behind you and helping people up to where you are, or help get through where you've come from.
Yeah.
So thank you for that time. And
appreciate
so we really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, guys, that's a wrap. See
you next week.
The Second Act with Michael and John stars Michael Newborn and John Ballinger. The podcast is produced by Seltzer Kings. For more information on the show, check out michaelandjohn.com, or if you'd like to get involved in the conversation, give the guys a shout on their socials at The Second Act with Michael and John on most platforms. Thanks for listening.
Seltzer Kings
Podcasts.